to the Gigging Success Podcast. And now, here's your host, Brad Lazarus.
Hello and welcome to the Gigging Success Podcast, where you'll discover the tactics and strategies of some of the world's most successful cover bands. They'll help you fast-track your way to more of those better paid gigs you deserve. On this week's show, I'm talking to Graeme Nash, who runs a band called Daft. They're a straight-up kind of party covers band. You can find them at daftonline.co.uk. What's really interesting about Graeme is he's seriously switched on to the whole kind of marketing side, cover band marketing side of things, really focused on customer service, which I think has been a massive part of the success of the band. He's also in the last year gone pro with the band. So he had a full-time sales job for many years, which he'll tell us a little bit about. But the band's been going since about the mid-90s. So it's been ticking over in the background and building. And he made that decision not long ago to go full-time pro. So I try and delve in and talk to him a little bit about his mindset, how he managed to do that, what he had in place, and his experience of basically going from semi-pro to pro. We also talk a little bit about the marketing side of things, what he's doing to get results. He's got some really interesting stuff he's doing with social media. His website is absolutely fantastic, so do go and check that out. And I talk about some of the elements on his website as well and find out what his thinking is behind those. So I hope you enjoy the interview. In the meantime, if you haven't done so already and you're new to the podcast or you just haven't gone and downloaded it yet, you can go and get our Cover Band Essentials guide, which includes 5 free and easy killer tactics and strategies to get more bookings and dominate the competition in the current economy. And you can get that from giggingsuccess.com/CBE. So let's waste no more time and we'll get straight into the interview with Graeme. Right, so I'm here today with the very switched on Graeme Nash from Daft, the band. How are you, Graeme?
Very good, thank you, Brad. How are you?
Good stuff. Yeah, not bad. It's the end of a kind of a long working day. So have you had a good day?
Yeah, it's been a good day. Very busy.
Bookings.
yeah. A lot of ongoing bookings that we're working on, and new inquiries continue to come in. So yeah, good day.
Excellent. Well, look, just so everybody, I came across Graeme's website, which is at daftonline.co.uk, and it just stood out. I mean, as you can imagine, I look at a lot of cover band websites in what I do with Gigging Success, and Graeme's website just absolutely stuck out a mile as being absolute kind of top quality, not only in terms of the design and the imagery, etc., but the way that you'd actually kind of presented what the offer was, what the band was, the way that you've structured kind of packages, the way that you communicated your song list, everything on there was just kind of screaming kind of quality. So I got in touch with Graeme, and we've been talking a little bit generally about kind of cover band marketing. So I had to get him on the podcast. So I'm really pleased that you're here. It's been about 6 weeks in the waiting. It's been a bit busy, hasn't it, lately? So so tell us a little bit, Graeme, about your background, I suppose. Well, I should actually, before we go into that, I should tell people that what is Daft? Give us a kind of a sum up what Daft is as a band.
Purely and simply, Daft is a rock pop party band. It's a band that's put together and developed over quite a few years now into an act that's there to have fun, to provide fun, but at the same time to provide, a really good standard of musicianship and quality as far as the stage output is concerned. But first and foremost, when people have parties, when they want to have a good night, I like to think that Daft is the kind of band that fits in well to that kind of mentality.
Right. Okay. Excellent. And you get that point across exceptionally well in your marketing as well, which is great. So we'll go into some of the elements of that in a little bit more detail. So give us a little bit of background, because you pretty much, you started out prior to working on Daft. You have been in a full-time sales professional role. You're employed by SAP, was it?
Yeah, that was I think the biggest chunk of my career life, my working career life, was with SAP. So just under a decade with those guys. And Daft has been a band that really comes from school days. I'm 36 as of this recording today. And the band originally started back in school. So when you're that kind of age and as you go through your 20s and so on, and unless you really decide to make music or creative arts of any description really your full-time occupation, I think it's pretty common for most people to have some kind of regular stroke day job, regular source of income through which they would typically work, let's say 9 to 5. But like a lot of musicians, come the evenings, come the weekends, we'd head out with the band and play. So Daft has kind of been a hobby for many years. Then it turned into quite an interesting and serious hobby. And as of today, it's now my full-time occupation. So it's been a real growth.
So when did it become full-time for you? Because I think this will be interesting. A lot of people will be looking at moving semi-pro into pro. So yeah. When did you go pro on this?
To put a date on the very day I came full-time would, I guess, have been about 18 months ago. But it's an interesting point, really, because the attitude we've had towards it, not just me, but the rest of the guys in the band collectively, the attitude towards it has always been that of a full-time, dedicated, professional outfit. So whilst my physical time per day has become full-time in the last 18 months, I still think the workload and the input that we have with the act has probably sort of remained fairly consistent for quite a long time, for the last decade or so. But certainly today, yeah. I mean, it fills up my days. I've managed to make it a full-time occupation, certainly from a time management point of view. I could literally spend, 8 till 6 every day purely on Daft activities if I could and was able to. But there's other lines of work that I'm involved in as well, music-related, self-employed and self-driven. But, certainly the band has taken up now quite a large chunk of my day-to-day life, yeah.
Right. And what was the process of moving? What made you decide that you wanted to go from semi-pro and turn Daft into a full-time thing?
I think it's a whole collection of things. I think fundamentally the bottom line has to be, are you confident that you can take your current workload, increase it some more, and ultimately put food on the table, and survive, and get by. And I think if you can answer yes to that, could I do this today and can I do this tomorrow with a little bit of change and maybe tweaking a few things here and there, but could I do that? Then I think that was the point that I felt that I could. I looked at our client base, I looked at the gigs we had in the diary and the kind of inquiries that we were continuing to get. I also looked at where I wanted the band to be. What did I want Daft to be and what do the guys in the act want Daft to be? It's not just about me, is it? It's not just about the individual that you may speak to in the line of your podcasting, but it's always about the act collectively and those involved with it. And you need to have their support. It's imperative. If you're driving really, really hard, trying to fill every night with some kind of booking, but nobody else in the band wants to do it that way, then it's not going to be long before, the metaphorical car crash happens. But what I was able to do was, for many years, in fact, have been able to do is get the support of the guys in the band, understand what it is that they want from the act, and tie that in with what I needed to do. And I just felt that all things considered, income, workload, objectives, and so on, all things considered, I was able to do it. At this stage of my life and this stage of the band's life, it felt like the right time to really make it something dedicated and full time.
Right. And I mean, in terms of, because I think people will be curious to know what that transition point is in terms of kind of gig numbers. Where were you kind of 2 years ago when you were thinking about making this decision, in terms of how many bookings did you have, for example, in the diary, which made you think, okay, I've got a full-time living that at least we're on the path to. Yeah. If I decided to do that, what kind of numbers are we looking at?
Well, I mean, for us, it's quite simple. We, as Daft, typically fill somewhere between 50 and 70 bookings per year. Now, I know in comparison to other acts, that maybe isn't very many. I'm aware of acts, I'm friends with acts that maybe do 100, 120, 150, I don't know, even a couple of hundred bookings a year. But our primary focus area is weekends. There are exceptions to that rule, but our primary focus is weekends. And through that strategy alone, you're restricted. There are only approximately 100 dates in the year, given holidays and times where it's simply not possible to gig. Approximately 100 days in the year that you can actually perform on. So for us, it's about striking the balance between volume and value. You can be a really high volume band that operates at a fairly low value, and your outcome is going to be the same than if you're a band who operates on, let's say, a lesser volume overall, but has a much higher value. So the trick for Daft and the trick for me was to try and find, and continues to be, to try and find the balance where we're not overcommitting and we're not putting people in difficult positions, primarily those in the band, but that we're able to function and operate on the income that we generate from the gigs that we do. So we've struck the balance somewhere around about the, like I say, 50 to 70 gigs per year.
And it's important to note as well that the other guys in the band are semi-pro.
Yeah. I mean,
how did you? I mean, one thing that does crop up a lot is getting buy-in from other band members, because primarily Daft is your band, isn't it?
I don't know. Well, I'm quite delicate about that particular line of conversation and answer, because I think it's fair to say I drive it. I take the responsibility, but I wouldn't be what I'm doing without those guys. And if we've done a good gig and we've generated an inquiry from it and some interest from somewhere else because of that gig, then in reality, I'm only 20% responsible for that. It was the performance of the rest of the guys that helped put the band in that position. So, yeah, I feel I can make the decisions. And I think we're in a position these days where I'm able to make decisions and we don't have to have big, long, debates about it.
Yeah, sure. But decisions by committee. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're very consultative with each other, but ultimately I know that if I need to make a decision fairly quickly or do something productive for the act, I can go ahead and do that. And we have various other systems which we may or may not go into on this conversation that maybe facilitate it. But ultimately, yes, it's a band that I started with some friends, and the lineup may have changed over those years, but I still consider Daft a jointly owned venture. It's something that everybody involved with should hopefully, feel proud of and part of, from the point of view that they're owners as well.
Sure. So, I mean, another kind of question another kind of bugbear, if you like, that does come up a lot amongst, the gigging success audience and the listeners is this kind of idea of getting buy-in from the rest of the band members, which is really the kind of the secret sauce to kind of moving the band forward. How do you structure that? What's the story behind that?
I think if you look at it over a long period of time, and it was a fairly dedicated decision on my part some years ago, it's all about taking responsibility. It ultimately falls down to taking responsibility, and that in turn is defined by what action you take. So it wouldn't be uncommon for bands to sit around a rehearsal room or having a beer somewhere and discuss until the cows come home where they should play, what songs they should play, how they should play them, what money they should go out for, what they should wear on stage, what equipment they should buy, who owns the PA, blah, 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 blah. These subject lists go on forever and ever. But ultimately, if you put a bit of a stop to all of the speculative, almost irrelevant lines of conversation about things like that, and do it, look at your client base, look at what it is they're asking you to do, then you sit down in front of your computer, have a little visionary moment, picture yourself on stage and picture yourself working with this particular client you might be thinking about, or a wedding inquiry that you've had, and think, what is it that I need to do for them? What songs is it that they're going to want to hear? How are they going to want me to look? And what's the best way for me to really meet the needs of my client? And then you need to do it. So once you get these ideas formed, and it can be literally anything from a song going onto the repertoire, or an image adjustment, or whatever the case may be, but do it. And if you're the one that kind of comes forward and says, look, guys, this is the thought I've had. This is the reason I've had the thought. And this is what I think we should do about it. It's kind of easier to get somebody's buy-in to an actual example, an actual request, than it is to come up with an agreement from 5 or 6 different people after a 3-hour-long discussion. Okay. So to summarize, I think over the long period of time that we've been together, I guess I've just gone ahead and done things with permission and with consultation. But by doing it, I've kind of earned the position, I suppose, where the guys just trust me to get on with it and look after them and look after the act.
Okay, that's really interesting. So there's 2 approaches you can take there. You can either sit down for 3 hours in a bar over 3 beers and decide this big strategy, and then divvy up the different jobs. But you're actually kind of taking a different approach, which is saying, look, I've got this, and this idea, tactic or strategy. Yeah. Can I run with it?
Yeah, I think that would be more the way. And over time, you may find that there are tasks that you can ask for help on, and even in some cases delegate. You might want to put a medley together, or you might want to put a little showpiece together, and you might ask for the creative input from one of the guys because you feel he's particularly good at that, for example. But I think all the tedious stuff, the admin and the functioning as the act that you are, the day-to-day stuff, can be quite difficult to manage if you've got 5 people trying to do it, all with their own different methods and their own different ways and ideas. And ultimately, the people that benefit the least from that kind of setup are the band themselves and the clients. So I tend to feel that, if you sort of deliver that kind of vision and that kind of task list, and ask for some help, you tend to get it, and the guys in my band or in our band are particularly good at that.
So you're very much acting as the driving force, and if everyone's bought in at that point then.
Yeah, I think so. Just get on and do it. It's all about action at the end of the day. There's no point sitting around discussing it and arguing whether Guns N' Roses are a good band or not, or whether you should play more funk. If that's the kind of booking you're getting, you decide it needs doing. And to be honest, once you've done it, and the case has been proven through experience, if you come to the end of a gig and you get feedback or you get comments that say, that was great, that was exactly what we asked for, we know perhaps funk isn't your strongest point, but you really tried and you really pulled that together and it was really appreciated that you did that, then it feels like a big pat on the back, and it kind of goes down as a mark of success for the band. And next time round, it's never as hard to get that job done again. Everybody has seen the evidence of it being successful.
Interesting, right? Okay, no, that's great. I think that gives people some really good kind of ideas of how to move forward, because I know that can be a big issue, is getting because listeners, musicians that are listening to this podcast inherently have a vested interest in the band and are looking to move things forward. Otherwise, you wouldn't be listening to this podcast. So I think that would ring. Hopefully, that rings really true for them. So that's great. So. Just kind of moving on to your website, which is I've always been very impressed with. And
thank you.
No, it really was. It really stood out a mile, and I think everybody should go and definitely have a look at it. But how long's the website been up?
So, as a domain name, the site.
Well, in its current form.
It's only really been there since late January 2014. Okay. So just over 6 months now.
Well, some of the clever things, I just wanted to pick out some of the clever things that you're doing on there. Obviously, people are listening to this, so they can't see the website, but I think the concepts will definitely kind of, will definitely be something that we can definitely kind of explain. One page you've got is packages.
Yeah.
Now, cleverly, you've broken down, what you do basically as a 6-piece band into 3 different packages. Do you want to kind of just talk us through what your thinking was there?
Yeah, of course. I mean, that was a result of, again, many years of inquiries, many years of discussions with people. When I redid the site, and at the end of 2013,
Sorry, Graeme, before we go on, I think it's going to make more sense if I tell people what those packages are.
Okay,
very briefly, what Graeme's done is he's broken down silver, gold, and platinum packages. So silver has a number of different elements to it, which is 1 song request, an hour and a half of live music, acoustic duo, perfect for approximately 50 guests. So people are kind of almost self-selecting which package is right for them, aren't they?
Yeah.
The gold, we move up into, 150 guests, 2 hours of live music, disco included, etc. So there's some other elements on there. And obviously then we move up into platinum, where there's 2.5 hours of music. And basically you're layering up the offer really from silver, gold to platinum, aren't you? So sorry, I just wanted to mention that because I think it's important that people understand what we're talking about.
Yeah, of course. And in no way is this unique. There's many other bands and there's many other industries that offer their products in various package forms. But the reason I did it for us is as a result of, like I say, many conversations over many years. You tend to find yourself, with all intents and purposes, having the same conversation, again and again and again. It's a wedding, it's local, it's 100 people, it's, a typical evening affair. But what did seem to change was people's budgets. Primarily, I still think, people book bands based on what they can afford in a lot of cases. And it's a huge amount of fun and gets me up out of bed every day, the prospect of talking to a potential customer about what it is we can do for their event. And that potential customer could be an absolute newbie to the world of live music, or they could be somebody in their mature years who've maybe booked a band a couple of times for other events and other purposes. So the range of experience that you get in your client base is tremendous. It can literally be everything and anything. So the packages were defined and put together based on what I feel are the most commonly booked options. Now, the packages are not supposed to be definitive and final. They're there to give the client a starting point for conversation. Like most bands, this is always a problem to me because I like to put prices in front of people. I think it's always better when I'm a buyer, when I'm purchasing and browsing the internet for a product. It's not very easy when you've got absolutely no idea what something costs. So you also tend to get a lot of emails that just simply say, how much do you charge? And that question is never very easy to answer because, as any band will know, any inquiry process has to have quite a large set of information and data available alongside the inquiry to help you put the price together. We all know that a booking 5 miles down the road on a Thursday night in February is going to be a different price to a booking 300 miles away in the midst of wedding season. It's just a different scenario. So rather than just having this situation where people say, how much do you charge? How much do you charge? And continually asking the same thing over and over again, we put the packages together so that it gives people a general understanding of what kind of service, what kind of range of services are available to them. The band has to be able to diversify as well. See, being in a cover band is not just about that couple of hours you play for, from the start of set 1 to the end of set 2. There's a whole host of other things that you are able to do if you want to do them. And there's the whole customer service element associated to running a band as well. So with the packages, it, like you've identified already, it goes through a kind of a rising scale. If somebody is a bit of a newbie and they're perhaps not flush with the best budget in the world, we as a band still want to help them. You know, we still want to play for them and be part of their day and obtain a booking. So we put together the silver package to offer what is still actually a very standard and I feel very good amount of service to the customer. There's still 2 45-minute sets there with our sound engineer involved and our lighting packages and a huge investment we've made in production equipment, front of house equipment, PA and monitoring and so on. You know, we still have all of that, nothing sacrificed there. But then we build on that. So if the budgets are slightly more and perhaps you'd like us to provide the disco as well, perhaps you'd like us to play for a longer period of time, perhaps you'd like us to travel further, then we've got the gold package for that. And again, same principle for the platinum. We play for longer, we travel further, we provide more in the way of services. We can actually take with us a separate DJ to provide a fully independent DJ service when the band isn't performing. So, you know, today the virtual DJ setup is very common. The iPad / laptop playlist service, you know, a lot of bands do that. But the platinum actually includes a separate standalone DJ. But it's a great way of initiating conversation. If it does nothing else other than get conversation underway, that's what it's good for.
No, it's great. I think it's, as a user on the website, it's very engaging because you're looking to see which package is right for you rather than just kind of wondering. I mean, I think it draws people in, definitely.
It does, and you still get the question, you know, how much is your silver package? But just that question alone gives me a much clearer understanding of where the client is. You know, it helps me understand immediately the kind of input they're looking for from us when it comes to their event. So it's a really great way of starting the conversation. It's also a good way to leverage and obtain a discussion around providing additional services. The concept of upselling or cross-selling to different kinds of products and things that we do. You know, once you start talking about packages, you can recommend moving to the gold package. It sounds like the gold package might be actually the best package for you.
And out of interest, which one do people mostly go for?
Gold, without a question. Yeah, I mean, it's the gold package. I mean, it's displayed on the website in a fairly classic way and cliched way of being the central column there that's bigger than the other two columns. But yeah, gold.
And is that the most profitable for you?
Have
you engineered that?
I think if you look at the amount of additional services that go with the package, the profitability from a margin perspective probably remains fairly consistent throughout all three of the packages. We're not a particularly expensive band, actually. The pricing structure we've had has been designed to be fair and reasonable, but a bit more than perhaps the up and coming bands and bands that haven't maybe grown and invested as much as arguably we have over the years. But even then, it's still a pretty reasonable price. Not sure if I should mention prices on the podcast. But,
no, you don't. There's no obligation to talk about money.
But genuinely speaking, the ethos of the band is and has always been to provide a great service without some ridiculous price tag that comes with it. You know, I've worked with a lot of other bands. I've seen a lot of other bands, and I question sometimes the prices that people expect people to pay for them. I think if you're reasonable, you're realistic, focus on service, you'll get bookings.
No, that's great. That's great. So just moving on to your social media, because I know this is a big area for you. You've worked really hard on this. You've noticed you've got about 2,500 Facebook likes. Which I'm sure most of us know it ain't easy to get 2,500 Facebook likes. So what are you doing there? Using some some clever strategies and tactics with images and what have you. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, well, I think first and foremost, I was a very early adopter of social media through my line of work. It was very common and very normal for people to be engaged in new technology, certainly new web technology. So, the day I heard the word Facebook, I remember being one of the first people within my circle of friends and general colleagues that opened an account with Facebook, and I kind of got it very early on. It didn't take long for people to catch up, obviously. It's a very, very simple concept and it works very, very well. But I immediately started to see there's a couple of things that we can do here to take advantage of, or to use these platforms as they've been designed to be used. And one of those was photography. One of my bugbears actually is when I look at other bands, you can often find bands with lots of galleries, but they tend to be exactly the same shot over and over and over and over again. It's the guitarist playing a guitar, it's the singer singing into a mic, it's the drummer playing the drums, and then there's another gallery of exactly the same thing, and then exactly the same thing 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 times over. What I actually found was more appreciated by people, including potential clients, was shots of the wider event, of the people that were at the gig. I like to from day one, I like to capture what actually happened at the gig. I wanted people to see that, we've come away with 2 or 3 or 400 photos from every gig we've ever done. And nearly every single one of them has got somebody dancing or laughing or messing around or singing, or just general photos of what goes on at the gig. Somebody jumps up on stage and sings with us, or there's a funny moment that occurs. Somebody's in a fancy dress costume. We capture it all and we put it straight onto the Facebook page the next day. So we have a member of our team called Annie, big shout out to Annie, who runs around like an absolute madwoman throughout the course of a gig, snapping away. She goes and takes photos of individuals, of couples, and she asks them, "Hey guys, smile for the camera." We get their pictures. The next day I go through them all and I edit them and give them a bit of a general retouch so that they're not quite so bland straight out of the camera. Get rid of all the ones that are no good or generally unusable, and then we put them onto Facebook. We'll also go ahead and share that folder or that album with the venue that we've played, or perhaps with the client that's booked us. And within a couple of hours, almost religiously, you'll find people have started to tag themselves. They've started to share the photo. They've started to comment on it. It's quite funny watching the comments come in, really, because you see whole lines of conversation taking place between groups and individuals and friends. It could just be quite revealing and funny sometimes. But the thing about it is that, for all the people that see the shots, a good percentage of them then go ahead and like the page, because they remember it. You've got to move quickly with social media. There's no point putting the photos up, to be honest with you, anything more than 24 hours after you took them. It becomes a bit of a distant memory, and other things have started to happen on social media for that person. If you missed the boat. So literally very next morning, get them online, get them shared, and let social media do the work after that. So after so many years,
it's probably worth mentioning though. I mean, a lot of people might feel quite daunted about do you need a photographer? Do you need to then spend 6 hours the next day touching? You don't need to do that. You can take the system that you've evidently perfected and do that with 2 or 3 photos, which you could take on a half decent camera or a decent iPhone.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, we just use a simple point and shoot camera, just a Panasonic Lumix jobby from PC World. It's not an expensive model. It's always good to have, and this is, it's usable across other purposes as well, but it's always good to have a bit of a photo editing package, just to kind of, like I say, give those photos a little bit of a crop or a realignment or whatever. Just so.
And then you've also got, I noticed you've got your logo on each one of the photos as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's a function of the software that I use. I happen to use Adobe Lightroom. I'm sure many other people have got that product. It's an excellent product. But when you export photos, you can attach your watermark and have it put the watermark onto all of the pictures. So it's just a nice way of sort of virally and organically spreading your little logo amongst usually quite a large audience base.
Fantastic. It's brilliant. And so that's evidently. And do you know how many inquiries you're bringing in from that activity? Can you measure that, or have you?
I mean, the vast majority of inquiries that come in are usually from people who have been referred or they've seen us perform at an event somewhere. But I don't think you can put an actual conversion figure onto how many photos do you post versus how many inquiries do you get. But I think it helps reinstate the situation, given that in many circumstances, not to generalize too much here, but usually by 11 o'clock at night at most of our gigs, it's fair to say the audiences have usually had a couple of drinks. You know, it's usually a case of like the night is in full flow. And I'm pretty sure that come the next morning, they've got absolutely no idea what the name of the band was that played last night. But by 11 o'clock on Sunday morning, I'm tagging the bride, or I'm tagging the groom, or I'm tagging people at the pub or the venue or whoever. And that's when they go, oh, yeah, it was Daft, wasn't it? And I tend to feel that might help stick the name in their mind for a bit.
Too right. It certainly seems that way. So, okay, that's great. Now, just one last kind of thing that I wanted to cover. You've obviously got a sales background.
Yeah.
And I know that a lot of musicians kind of struggle with the whole selling thing. How have you, what process do you go through? An inquiry comes in. Just talk us through the kind of process briefly that you go, because we haven't got too much time left. But talk us briefly through the process that you go through when an inquiry comes in.
Well, the first thing and most important thing is that you've got to be quick. If you get an inquiry, and stop whatever it is you're doing, turn your focus to the inquiry and make a response. I think, generally speaking, responding to inquiries is a fairly straightforward process. The hard bit is getting the inquiries in the first place. But when you get an inquiry and you're in place to respond to it, be quick. You know, get back to that client with, there's likely to be a question or some kind of request of you in the original inquiry you've received. Focus on the point in hand. Make sure you answer the customer's question. But do it within 5 minutes, literally if you can, 5 minutes, certainly within a few hours, and certainly no more than 24 hours. But I think it's just another little element that makes up the whole term of customer service. And I think these days there are a lot of bands out there. It's much easier to find bands these days. They're very easy to find on web searches and via various directories. But if you're the one that comes back quickly, professionally, with a customer service driven attitude, I tend to feel that works quite well. And
what happens once you've sent your quote off, or you've spoken to that prospect? Are you then following up? What's the next step?
Yeah, so if an inquiry does need to go through a development process, we have, I've developed a follow-up procedural system that allows me to touch base with that client, check in with them from time to time, and see how things are going. You've got to be careful. A lot of people don't like to be pressured and pushed, and in looking for a band, it's quite common that person may spend some weeks going to see gigs, going to different venues. So it could be quite some time before you've got a decision. But I've structured, like I say, these touch points that we drop an email or we drop a call out to the client on a periodic basis, just to see how they're doing. We'll also drop into them any kind of additional useful information that could be relevant. I mean, it's not uncommon for us to be playing the same wedding venue 3 or 4 or 5 times a year in some cases. In those circumstances, if I've just done a wedding, we've just done a gig at a wedding at a venue that I know another client is inquiring about, I may share the photo album with them and show them, how this wedding looked at their chosen venue. And it,
so you're leveraging on these photos again. They're not
something
just going
like, or a piece of video, or they're very much marketing tools. You can use them even years after the event. I mean, Halloween comes around once every year, and again we've made quite a lot of effort to gather loads of Halloween related media over the years we've done Halloween gigs, because today, quite recently, I put together a Halloween blog post, and I was able to fill out that blog post with, archive footage and photography from previous events. You kind of let the pictures and the media do the talking for you. People's biggest scare is, what are they going to look like? What are they going to sound like? How are they going to be? But if
will they even turn up?
Well, yeah, will they even turn up? But when you've got evidence, numerous cases of evidence of you in full flow with a couple of hundred people partying away with you, that's quite a handy thing to have.
Yeah, and the rest. Excellent. Yeah. No, that's fantastic. Just as a kind of final thing, just kind of going back to your transition from semi-pro to pro.
Yeah.
Have you got any advice for anyone that's thinking about making that transition? Because I know that's there's a lot of semi-professional musicians that listen that are looking to make that transition. Is there any couple of things that you could recommend they think about do? Or?
I'd love to. I mean, I'd also just say at this stage, I really enjoy working with other people and other bands. I've never felt this town is only big enough for the one of us. I'm quite the opposite. I think when bands work together, when we join forces and share information and learn off each other, that's a good thing. I've never been opposed to that. So I would even go as far as saying if anybody ever wanted to drop me a line or say hi or whatever, they're very, very welcome to. And in answer to your question, it's not just about the transition from semi-pro to pro. I think this is just general. If you're in a band, I think you should always try and have that can-do attitude, that flexible attitude, that customer-focused attitude. It's too common and too boring hearing how musicians don't want to play a song, or this is selling my soul and this is no good and I'm not going to play that, or I'm not going to turn up at this time. You're a business, people are paying you. Usually, don't get used to the fact that you charge $1,000 or couple of grand or even 500 quid for your services. That's still a lot of money to a lot of people. And when they pass over that money to you, they're not giving it to you because you happen to play guitar. They're giving it to you because they want you to do a job. So you've got to have that customer-focused attitude of making it work. Whatever the situation is, you make it work and you do what it is that's being asked of you. Don't say you roll over, but you provide a professional, can-do kind of attitude. And I think once you combine all of those elements and work at it, get out there and play. And if you're not booked this weekend, go and play somewhere, even if it's for very low fees, because somebody will see you. I mean, the amount of gigs we've done in small little places where somebody at the end of the night or following the gig has written to me and says, "Oh yeah, hi, I'm the event manager of." We've had the event manager of Aston Martin, Ducati, Goldman Sachs, Deloitte, Fujitsu. We've just bumped into these people along our travels, and they've booked us for their events that follow up. So I just think, do it, be customer focused, perform well, and do what's asked of you, and you should be okay.
And the results will come.
Yeah.
Excellent. Graeme, thank you. It's been, I can't believe that's 40 minutes already gone. I could speak for another hour and a half, and often we do. But listen, thanks so much. I really appreciate your time. We didn't really talk about your new agency venture, but I'm going to get you on to the podcast again in a few months' time, and we'll have a bit of a chat about that and see how it's going. In the meantime, thanks very much, and we'll catch up with you again soon.
Thanks, Brad. And listen, good luck to all the bands out there. I wish them all really well.
Brilliant. Thanks, mate.
Cheers, mate. Take care.
So there it is, Graeme Nash from Daft. Thank you to him for his time and being so open and honest with his information. I hope you found that really useful. Really worth going back and re-listening to some of those bits and pieces there as well, because there's some stuff that you can take away and implement yourself for your own band as well. So thanks again for listening. If you haven't done so already, I would really appreciate going to iTunes and leaving a review for the podcast in the iTunes store. So if you just go to iTunes and then click on iTunes store and then search for Gigging Success, you can go and leave a review there. Really helps to get the podcast up in the rankings so more people can benefit from the stuff that we're talking about. So thanks again, and I'll see you on the next podcast.